I filmed this vixen, and I couldn't stop thinking about her partner. After many years of attempts, I was finally able to catch a fox on camera, and not just a fox, a vixen, a pregnant one, feeding outside our little holiday home. I like foxes. They've been my favourite animal almost all my life, and therefore it's no wonder that I chose them to be the basis of my flagship novel series, Russet. If you aren't familiar with fox terms, foxes, like all animals, come in twos. Males, called dogs, and females, called vixens. And for this particular vixen, I'd also seen, and captured, but only once and only very briefly in much lower quality, both her and her partner together. And seeing the dynamic between them in real time really brought home a key relationship in Russet between two of my main characters, Vis and Storyteller. So I decided I'd better dig a little deeper into foxy relationships, and it surprised me. Most people think that foxes are solitary creatures, or loners, that the male especially will mate and then be gone. I knew that wasn't quite true, but I assumed it was somewhat accurate. I was wrong, and when I found out just how wrong I was, I then had to go back and rethink several of the scenes in Russet. Now, here she is. Take a look at her belly. You can see that she's heavily pregnant here. Not only the belly, but also in the way she moves a little slower than you would expect. She came to us every evening, and in the days following, I managed to get a very good amount of footage of her. And I watched her eat, just getting through it, getting as much of it down as possible, doing what foxes do, on her own. That's the assumption we bring to foxes, that they're lonely, solitary, nighttime scavengers. It's one of the most repeated things you'll hear about them. It's also, in the most important sense, completely wrong. Red foxes are solitary hunters, that part is very true. They chase prey alone because they're too small to chase it effectively in a pack. But solitary hunting doesn't mean solitary living, and it absolutely does not mean solitary parenting. What the research actually shows, and I'm talking David MacDonald's 15-year Oxford study, the University of Bristol's long-term fox project, peer-reviewed work going back 40 years, is that the red fox is one of the most committed fathers in the entire mammalian world. They're essential. And when I understood what that word actually means, essential, that gave me a whole new perspective around Vis that I hadn't even considered, let alone been able to put into words. Let me tell you what the dog fox actually does, because most of it happens in the dark out of sight, and almost nobody talks about it, or even knows about it. When the vixen is in her final few weeks of pregnancy, she of course begins to den. She selects a patch of ground, digs out an underground chamber, and prepares it. And from the moment she gives birth, she hardly ever leaves. The cubs, or kits, are born deaf and blind. They can't regulate their own body temperature. They can't even defecate, from either side, without their mother stimulating them. They're completely, helplessly dependent on her warmth, her milk, and her constant presence. So here's the question. If she can't leave, who feeds her? Correct, of course, her partner. For the first few weeks of the cubs' lives, the dog fox hunts every night alone, and delivers whole prey to the entrance of the den every 4 to 6 hours. He lies outside the den when he isn't hunting, not inside. He's not allowed in. He's obliged to guard the entrance. Specifically, protecting against cats who will eat newborn kits if given the chance. The researchers at Oxford documented what he looks like during this period. Gaunt, visibly thin and dull-coated, because he stopped prioritising himself. He brings the best prey, rabbits, birds, larger mammals, to the den, and hunts mice and voles for himself at the kill site. He's deliberately and measurably giving the best food to his family and only eating himself what's left. And here's the part that really did surprise me when I read it. When a dog fox is killed in these first few weeks, either by a car or a hunter or a rival, etc., the researchers studied what happens to his family. They found that none of the other foxes nearby stepped in to help feed the confined vixen and her kits, not even extended family, which, for anyone who's read part 1 of Russet knows, would put Amy in a very difficult situation. The vixen faces an impossible choice. Stay with the hypothermic, starving cubs, or leave them defenceless and hunt alone. In the wild, those kits will almost certainly die. He is the only reason they survive those first weeks. The wolf has a pack. The African wild dog has a pack. The fox has, well, himself, hunting alone. For a family he can hear, but can't yet see, because the missus won't let him in. That is what solitary actually means for the fox. Russet centres around a fox family, 5 kids, one mother called Storyteller, and one father called Vis. When I started writing Vis, I knew that I wanted him to be present, caring, and genuinely a father in every way that the word means something. I knew enough about foxes to know that they are indeed damn good dads, but that was about it. Therefore, I found myself writing in a very personified way, in a way that a dad would be from the human perspective, not as a fox actually is. The research I then did gave me the much fuller image that I needed, and now I find myself having to rewrite Vis in a totally new light. Vis, being a very present father, isn't quite the full-on anthropomorphism that I assumed it probably would be. Turns out it's actually just biology. He's the gaunt, skittish animal that's hunting during the night. He's, the food left at the entrance of the den with a low call letting her know that the food's ready. You could say he's the guardian laying at the gate, with his little ears flapping back and forth, keeping an eye out for threats, especially cats, which was interesting. And the other thing that the research gave me, which is something that I'm still processing now and could potentially change the overall story of the series itself, is what happens if he's gone. Because in my story, Russet's world will be very much shaped by loss, in ways that I hope has never really been considered before, and you'll feel deep down in your heart in all the right ways. Of course, I always knew, or perhaps maybe more assumed, that newborn kits losing their father would matter emotionally. But I perhaps didn't fully understand until this research to what extent this would also matter practically. It's the removal of the structure that keeps the whole family alive, at least at the very start of a kit's life. That Storyteller, without Vis, is a vixen left with an impossible choice. Will that be something that comes into play that early in Russ and his siblings' lives? I'm not sure yet. But knowing that changed significantly how I plan to continue writing Vis. It changed what his presence means in every scene he's in. So, after years of trying, I finally caught my first fox on camera. Because I both needed material for this channel, and something to talk about while writing, but also because I just really love foxes. I didn't expect them to teach me anything I didn't already know, but after seeing them together and wondering casually what their dynamic would be, they certainly did. We're now home from that holiday, so we can't keep an eye on her to see how she's getting on, nor unfortunately can we help by leaving food out for her partner. So I don't know if she's had her kits, how many, or if they'll survive. But somewhere nearby, her partner will be out there, doing exactly what dog foxes do in the dark. And now I actually find myself thinking more about him than I think about her. If you want to follow Russet's story as I write it, the actual story, not just the videos, there's a link to the newsletter in the description. No noise or spam or any of that nonsense, just the work. And the odd occasional little thing, like at the moment I've got a series of stickers that I'm making available on Etsy, which is a signed version of the Russet logo, which I've limited to only 100 in total for those that are supporting Russet from the very beginning. And if this made you think any differently about foxes, even slightly, then let me know in the comments. I read them all.